Hey, Evangel community, welcome once again to the Thursday Night Four Horsemen show. We have as our special guest, Chris Prophy, Musically Obsessed, Aaron Mutha-Alamere, and we've got Brandon from Mr. Hall of Fame joining us. And we're not doing a live stream tonight. We'll get back to that next week. We just wanted to do kind of a simple video because it's just going to be the four of us. So we're going to do the old standard format that we've done before. But tonight we want to talk about three albums that most people do not care for in a particular artist or band's discography, but we happen to really enjoy, and we disagree that these albums, why they get so much hate. So we're going to start with our first pick. Chris, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, definitely. And again, we were talking a little bit before the video started. I mean, I don't know how much hate that these albums actually get. I just know that these albums that at least I'm going to pick just don't get as much love as I think they should get. And the first one I'm going to show is this album by Yes called Tormato. And I think what threw people off was, one, the name of the album, Tormato, and just the, literally there's a tomato on the album cover being, just destroyed. The cover doesn't bother me. The title doesn't bother me. I think, unfortunately, it was the cover and some of the, there were kind of a couple maybe questionable songs in people's ears. This was an album that came out in 78. It followed Going for the One, which was a pretty popular album by Yes. This was the last album with John Anderson before he left. And then the next album after this was Drama, where they brought in a whole new, singer. And I guess maybe I could have shown Drama as well. I mean, I know people like that album, but I don't know how that falls in, Yes fans rankings. But this is a very strong album. I actually really like this album a lot. It's got quite a few good tunes on it. I love the song Rejoice, and Release, that ends side one is really, really good. Side two has one of my favorite Yes songs, Onward, which is a great ballad. And then it ends with a real proggy song called On the Silent Wings of Freedom. Now, there's a couple songs on here maybe that rubbed people the wrong way. There's a song called Don't Kill the Whale, which, is an environmental song. John Anderson kind of, taps into that every once in a while. And then a song called Arriving UFO. Well, I happen to like songs about UFOs. So, a little bit of a departure for the band. I think they were kind of maybe on their last legs a little bit. Maybe that's the reason John Anderson left. I'm not totally sure, but I really dig this record. I think it needs a little bit more love. So, I mean, I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, so anyway, just because, you were talking about the title of the album, Tormato. The original album was going to be titled Yes-Tor. T-O-R, and I'm not sure exactly where that title came from, but Hypnosis designed this cover, and he, Storm Thorgerson, or however you pronounce his name, showed the album artwork to Rick Wakeman, and Rick Wakeman hated it so much he threw a tomato at it.
Okay.
And then they're like, oh, okay, well, how about we keep that, and we'll call the album Tormato.
So that's an actual tomato that was thrown, or a tomato. That was an actual tomato that was thrown at the album.
Yes, yeah,
okay.
By Rick Wakeman.
Oh,
at least that's the way the urban legend goes, and that's what Wikipedia says. So I'm sticking to it.
Ooh.
But this was a period with Yes, where you always had, oh, now Rick Wakeman's going to leave and John Anderson's going to leave. And,
right.
Like you say, with Drama, they brought in the lead singer from the Buggles, who sang on Drama, and then they splintered again. And then they had, 90210. was their next album. After that,
Yeah.
Or whatever it was called. Anyway.
Yeah, I can never remember it, but
yeah. But I think, it was an interesting album because up to that point, they hadn't had that many songs on an album, probably since either the Yes album or Time and a Word.
yeah.
And so it was kind of different in that way. And I don't know if that was a reflection of the times, because most bands were kind of getting away from those long, extended prog rock suites and things like that. But yeah, I agree. I like that album a lot. I think it should get more attention, especially if you like Going for the One. There's no reason why you wouldn't like Tormato.
I agree with you though, Jeff, because like if you think about Tales from Topographic Oceans, I mean that album had 4 songs on it. Each song was like 25 minutes long. So I think that this is more of an accessible album. It's more of a rock sort of album, and maybe a little bit lighter in a thematic sort of way. And like I said, I mean, anybody questioning the merits of this record, you should listen to the song Onward. It's amazing.
Yep, awesome. All right, Aaron.
All right. I hope no one. I'm afraid someone might have picked this one, but I'm not sure. So I'll go with it. So this album is the 4th album by this band, and they were one of my favorite bands in the 80s. Had a huge hit with their 3rd album. Their first 2 were really heavy, and then they put this out. And a lot of people hated this record, the Dee Snider coming out of the deal. And, the problem I think they had was that they put Leader of the Pack out as the single when it first came out, even though they'd been doing that song live for years and years and years. It was one of the original ones they'd done. A lot of people didn't like the video and the song, but there's some really rocking stuff on here. Kill or Be Killed is one of my favorite Twisted Sister songs. You Want What We Got, another one of my favorites. I Believe in Rock and Roll is great. The title song, Come Out and Play, has that really creepy intro that I love. Even Be Cruel to Your School is good. I just think this is a very underrated record. And it's got, except for Leader of the Pack and Be Cruel to Your School, it's actually really heavy. Stuff like, Looking Out for Number One. And I just think this went right along. It came out after Stay Hungry, of course. And just people kind of fell off during this album, even though I still loved it. I've had this album since it came out. And I still
That was a follow-up to Stay Hungry?
Yes.
Okay. Is Looking Out for Number One a cover of the BTO song?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. If it is, it's really different. Let me check. But I don't think it is.
Okay.
I don't.
It's interesting you show that record, Aaron, because I picked that album up when I visited JC. Because I remember really liking that album, and I agree with you. I think that's a good choice. I just kind of wish, I like Leader of the Pack. I just kind of wish they didn't put it on there. And I know that they were playing it long before that album came out. And I agree with you too. Like Be Cruel to Your School, I don't know if that really fits with the album, because like you said, the rest of the album's pretty heavy.
Yeah, the deep cuts are great on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris, too, because, especially back when that first came out, following up on Stay Hungry, that was before YouTube and streaming services and all of that. So when they kind of used Leader of the Pack as one of the singles that they were kind of pushing out there with the video and everything, I mean, that alone had just automatically turned me off to that album back then. So I didn't even really listen to it until much, much later down the line.
Well, it's sort of like when Judas Priest did Johnny Be Good on, what was that, Ram It Down?
Or Motley Crue.
Yeah.
Girls, Girls, Girls.
Yeah.
I'll never understand that.
Well, I mean, Motley Crue, of course, did Smoking in the Boys' Room on Theater of Pain, but I like that. I like that.
It was okay. Yeah, that wasn't bad, considering.
Jailhouse Rock and Girls, 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 I think is what he's talking about. That's not as good.
What song was on Girls, Girls, Girls?
Jailhouse Rock.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, like you said, Aaron, this followed Stay Hungry. I mean, Stay Hungry is just from top to bottom, classic. Come Out and Play, a very good album. but there were a couple missteps in it. I think that was the only thing that was holding it back. And again, Leader of the Pack is not a bad song. Be Cruel to Your School is not a bad song. But I just think if those were replaced with 2 other songs, that would have been an even stronger record.
But you know, it's funny because you listen to it now, and those actually don't sound bad now. They sounded worse when they came out, and they kind of aged better than you think. Go back and listen to it.
I thought you might have showing that. We could, I guess, we could have probably shown Love Is for Suckers as well.
Yeah, I love that one. That's one of my favorite albums.
Yeah.
But I think this one gets more hate though. That's why I picked.
Yeah.
Good choice. Good choice.
Good pick.
All right, Brandon.
All right. So I'm going to jump right in. I think this is one that Aaron might have in his stack somewhere. So maybe I'm kind of glad I got to it first. But you know, big legendary band. Everybody is all, those that are into this genre really love them. I mean, they are, you know, some of the gods of the genre, so to speak. But I do think Slayer's Diabolical Musica was one that turned a lot of people off. Excuse me. And that's even talking about people within the band. I mean, when you hear Kerry King talk about this and just he slams it to no end, like he hated doing it, hate the sound. I mean, I've never heard him say anything positive about it. I've heard him say a gazillion negative things about it. You know, so you know when your lead guitarist is slamming the album that it's probably not getting a lot of love overall. But I think the thing that really kind of turned people off about it is it was Slayer kind of trying to catch up or get on board, however you want to put it, with stuff that was going on in the 90s, because this came out, I think, in 97, 98, something like that. And you can definitely tell they were trying to do a little more of they were trying not to be too scared to actually put a groove or some rhythms and not just kind of, you know, blast thrash all the way through like they do with most of their albums. But I actually think that's one of the things that made it kind of fantastic, actually. I mean, it actually is one of my favorite Slayer albums to listen to. You know, South of Heaven is one of my favorites, especially the title track, South of Heaven. And one of the reasons why is I think South of Heaven is probably one of the most accessible Slayer albums, you know, where again, you can find your groove. You can, if you're not really into, you know, heavy thrash and stuff like that, you can still easily find your way into that album. And I think that's kind of what this represents overall, because when you dive into stuff like Death's Head, you know, that song really has like a Slipknot type of feel to it. You know, if you didn't know the band and stuff like that, someone could easily fool you into saying, yeah, that's off the new Slipknot album, and you totally buy it. What else on there? Like Stain of Mine, you know, every time I hear that one, it has kind of that Weezer hash pipe type of groove to it, which again, you don't normally find those type of grooves in Slayer albums. And just on and on. I mean, Overt Enemies kind of has like a white zombie Creature of the Wheel. So just the fact that I hear so many other bands in the style that they did stuff on here, I think was the very thing that made a lot of Slayer fans just go like, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, this isn't Rain and Blood, you know, this isn't Christ Illusion and so forth. But like I said, to me, I think it's a freaking fantastic album. I love listening to this thing. So that's going to definitely be my number one pick.
Yeah, that's a heavy record. I know you had mentioned Kerry King. I think Kerry King referred to that as their turbo. Because,
yeah,
you know, I think every band has a turbo. I haven't listened to Diabolus in a long time, but it's the album that I don't really listen to that often.
Mm-hmm.
I think because it was such a departure, at least for me. But you're right, though, because it was almost like Slayer needed to try something different, because I think by 98, thrash had sort of run its course. And like you said, you have bands like Slipknot coming and Korn and all this with, you know, more of a groove-oriented metal. So I can imagine Slayer playing live and wanting to get that reaction from the crowd that a Slipknot would get.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they changed their sound. I mean, there, like you said, though, there's some really good stuff on here. I think it was just a little bit of a departure from them. I should go back and listen to the record again. I'd probably like it a lot more now.
Yeah. And, you know, I do that every single time with this album too, is I get it, I'll listen to it, and it's just like, oh man, that's amazing. That's one of my favorite Slayer albums.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I won't go to it for a long, long period of time. And then I'll see the cover and go, wait a minute, I'm having a hard time remembering what's on this album. Let me play it again. Oh my gosh, that's my favorite Slayer album. It's a really weird thing about it, but it's just, like I said, I just think it's just a very, very accessible album, which to me, I don't think it's a bad thing when groups do that, because I don't think Slayer lost themselves in it.
Yeah.
They just, I mean, God forbid they added a little groove to something they were doing. Like,
well, the other thing too is, like, as a band, they must get bored. It's like, do we really have to write Rain and Blood again?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Let's try something different. I almost showed an album, and I don't think anybody's going to show this album, so I'll talk about it. I was going to show Creator. They came out with an album called Endorama, which
Chris,
is like
I was going to show that.
Oh well, you know. It's like a goth industrial album. So that's the thing. I think it's cool when these bands try something different. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that was a good choice.
Yeah, but it's kind of, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, I think they were, it's probably a misstep for them to cover the Do Ron Ron on that record also. Talking about cover songs that don't belong on albums. I think that was probably a misstep, but
I actually don't own that album, so I can't comment much on it.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, I smell a VCLT.
To be in your stack. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of Slayer. I've got, Show No Mercy, Rain and Blood, South of Heaven, Season of the Abyss, and a couple on CD, a couple of later ones, but I don't have as much Slayer as other bands for some reason. I don't know why, because I like them a lot.
Yeah.
Especially the early stuff. But
yeah,
I've heard it, and I do like that album. I love the groove stuff. It's like Anthrax on this album was doing that same thing. They were getting into the groove.
Right.
A lot of those bands were doing that, and I actually like that sound too.
Right. And that stuff is always partial to me too, because if there's one thing that'll draw me in with metal, it is, I mean, it's why Godsmack's one of my favorite bands. It's just that big rhythmic groove. Like that just always pulls me in.
And I think probably Pantera was a big influence as well.
Most definitely.
So I Brandon, what's your favorite Slayer record?
I mean, it's kind of hard not to go with Rain and Blood, but I actually think South of Heaven has really taken over Rain of Blood just a little bit.
I was hoping you were going to say that, because that's mine too. Now I feel cooler because Brandon agrees with me.
But see, I'm a Rain and Blood guy.
I love
I like Rain and Blood better. I'm sorry.
Oh, so now we're going to have a little debate here: Rain and Blood versus South of Heaven.
I like Seasons of the Abyss a lot too. I love that album.
That's great. I mean, you can't go wrong with Rain and Blood, South of Heaven, or Seasons. They're all classics.
Right. But. All right, so on to you, Jeff.
All right. Well, my pick is a band that I don't talk very much about. And there were actually, a couple of records I could have picked by this band, but I'm picking this one because I feel like it's one of their most polarizing albums. Talking about Pink Floyd, The Final Cut, the last album with Roger Waters. A lot of people characterize it as it's essentially a Roger Waters solo album. There's not a whole lot of David Gilmour on here. Rick Wright was fired from the band after The Wall, so he doesn't appear on this record. Nick Mason was augmented by different drummers as well, so his participation is questionable. But I enjoy it for what it is. I like this album a lot. It's grown on me. The first time I heard it, I knew it was the album that followed The Wall. And so I really expected it's going to be an extension of The Wall. It's going to be more of the same. And I had seen the video for Not Now, John, which has got some Wall elements. It's probably the heaviest song on this album. But, the history of the album is that, they were going to put out, because The Wall, the movie, had just come out, and they were going to put out essentially a soundtrack album. And they were going to include some leftover tracks that hadn't made The Wall. And then the Falkland Islands War happened with the UK intervening in the Falkland Islands conflict. And Roger Waters developed it into a concept album, sort of like The Wall Part 2, but it's, really a concept album about, you know, the casualties of war and the consequences and the people who didn't come home, or the ones who did come home were so traumatized, and, you know, PTSD. And, you know, it's really, if you accept it for what it is, it's not The Wall, it's not Animals, it's not Wish You Were Here, it's not Dark Side of the Moon. And this is, I mean, yeah, it's a Roger Waters solo album, more or less. David Gilmour does participate a little bit, but he and Roger Waters were not getting along at all at this point. And so Roger Waters just kind of took the reins. And, you know, I think David Gilmour wasn't contributing a whole lot because he wasn't really that much of a songwriter. I mean, he did a little bit of it in early Pink Floyd, but then starting with Dark Side of the Moon, Roger Waters just kind of, you know, started running the show for Pink Floyd. But it's a more subdued album. You know, and the people say about Roger Waters is content to, you know, take the same melody and write 10 different sets of lyrics. And David Gilmour is content to take the same set of lyrics and write 10 different melodies to it. You know, that's the difference between the two of them in terms of, you know, their style as musicians. But I like it. I like it a lot. It's got a narrative running through it. It is subdued. I mean, it picks up at times, but it's a kind of a mournful album. And, you know, I think that's why people don't like it, because it doesn't rock as hard as Animals did. It's not got like progressive moments like Wish You Were Here does. It doesn't flow together in the same way that Dark Side of the Moon does. But I enjoy it. I mean, I think if they had tried to, you know, do The Wall Part 2, you know, I don't know how that would have turned out. But there are some tracks on here that Roger Waters reworked that were rejected when they were making The Wall. And that was one of David Gilmour's big beefs was, you know, these songs weren't good enough for The Wall. Why are they all of a sudden good enough for this album? And I think he kind of checked out during the recording sessions and was like, fine, whatever. You know, let me know when you need a guitar solo. And, you know, David Gilmour only has one vocal on here, which is Not Now John. But I think, you know, I think there's a lot of good moments on here. The Fletcher Memorial Home is a great track. I like the Gunner's Return, I think is great. The only problem I have with this is in subsequent reissues, they've kind of sandwiched When the Tigers ran free or whatever on repressings of this record, which just disrupts the flow. If you're familiar with the original album, they just kind of shoehorned, you know, When the Tigers broke free and put it on this album, which it doesn't belong there. It was in the movie soundtrack for The Wall. And so I think they just wanted to get it onto a record somewhere. And so when they repressed it, they threw it on here. But if you can find the original copy of it, I think it flows a lot better. But anyway, I'm sticking up for it.
That's a really good choice. It's a strange album for me because I like it, but it's one of those albums that sometimes I listen to it, I'm like, this is a great album. And then other times I listen to it and I struggle getting through it for whatever reason. That's what's strange about it. But like you said, you can't deny it. There are some really good songs on it. I love Your Possible Pasts. You know, The Gunner's Dream is great. Paranoid Eyes is really good. And the title track is awesome too. It's just unfortunately it had to follow The Wall.
Right. Which, you know, any album that had to follow The Wall was, you know, going to disappoint people. But
yeah, good choice.
Yeah, thanks. All right, back to you, Chris.
All right. Well, I know Aaron is going to agree with me on this one, but I'm going with Iron Maiden Virtual 11. I mean, check this gatefold out, friends. Iron Maiden playing soccer. Or I'm sorry, football, whatever you want to call it.
It's like a photograph off a nice pair.
Yeah. I love the Blaze Bayley years. I'm a big Blaze fan. Blaze, you know, I don't think he was the perfect fit for Maiden. And really, I mean, who's going to follow Bruce Dickinson? I mean, come on. But
Right.
Blaze Bayley did, I thought, a good job. I mean, I listened to some of his singing live. There's not a lot of live clips of him, but some songs he couldn't sing in the Maiden catalog live just because he had a different range than Bruce Dickinson. It's not that he's a bad singer. It's just that he had a different range. And I don't know if Steve Harris was able to write songs that totally fit Blaze's vocal style. But this album rocks. It opens up with Future Real, which is a killer song. The Angel and the Gambler, yes, it's a long song, but I really like it. It's sort of got a 70s vibe to it. Lightning Strikes Twice, it's a Dave Murray song, killer. It's got the Klansman on it, which Maiden's still playing live to this day. I like the rest of the tracks. When Two Worlds Collide, The Educated Fool has a cool little bass line to it. Don't Look to the Eyes of a Stranger. And then it ends with Como Estas Amigos. I love every song on this record. Probably between this and the X Factor, I like this better than the X Factor. I like the X Factor, but this I feel is just a tad bit better. It's brighter. It's a little bit more upbeat than the X Factor is. And Blaze Bayley, I'm telling you right now, if you are a metal fan, check out Blaze's solo records. He's got quite a few, and they are all phenomenal. So I had to give love to the Blaze years.
Why did Bruce Dickinson leave?
What?
Why did Bruce Dickinson leave the band?
I think this is what I think. I think he wanted to try something different. I think the last album he was with them on was No Prayer for the Dying, correct? Yeah, I think so. And I think Bruce was wanting to go maybe a more hard rock direction, because you can even tell on some of the songs he was writing, like Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, things like that. I think he wanted Maiden to kind of go in a different direction. And I don't know how open Steve Harris was to that. And maybe Bruce wanted to just kind of break free from the whole chains of Iron Maiden until he realized, like, oh shit, I can make a lot of money if I'm with Iron Maiden. So he went back, and the rest is history. But I think he just wanted to change.
And yeah, his Catchy Millionaire album, I absolutely loved that album too, when he went solo. And it was more of the hard rock, like you said. But getting back to Blaze, I was really into this record, this Wolfsbane. There's Blaze Bayley right there. This is before he was in Iron Maiden. So I was so excited that he was going to be the singer of Iron Maiden. This is one of my all-time favorite records of this year. It's amazing, this record. And he's one of my favorite singers because of that record. And so when he came out with this one here, which I actually prefer just slightly, we're a little opposite, but I love them both. And it threw me because he didn't sound the same as he did on Wolfsbane, but he was still good. It was still Blaze, but that Wolfsbane record, man, it's so good.
And this is Blaze's latest album called War Within Me. I happen to have it signed by Mr. Blaze.
Did you meet him?
What'd you say?
Did you meet him?
No, I just pre-ordered it on his website. They had like a bundle or whatever, so I got that. But this is a great album. I'm telling you right now, if you are into metal, and I love his themes too. He always has sort of like a space sci-fi theme to his stuff. So I would check out anything by Blaze Bayley.
Well, Iron Maiden, is one of those bands where they switched lead singers, and their quality was still consistent. Same with like Motley Crue when they did that album with John Corabi. People really love that album, and then you've got bands like Van Halen where it's like the whole, the whole Sammy Hagar years, which was a total debacle. That was a huge mistake. So sometimes it works, sometimes like, with Van Halen and Sammy Hagar, it totally doesn't work. But
and the other thing I'm going to say about this record is I like it because there's just two guitarists. I'm not into three guitars. Like, we don't need Yannick, Adrian, and Dave Murray. I like the three. Well, Yannick, I don't know. He kind of jumps around the stage like a lunatic sometimes. But, and I don't know if I'm too into his playing style. I don't feel like Maiden needs 3 guitarists. I think they're keeping Yannick on because they probably feel sorry for him because they're like, dude, you stuck with us through the lean years. But I think their production gets a little muddy sometimes. This is a nice, bright album for me.
Did they ever have a guitarist?
I think the guy from Toto was in Maiden for an album or so.
Well, wasn't the guy from Mr. Mister also in Iron Maiden for an album?
Yeah. He played on a couple B-sides from Fear of the Dark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, Aaron, you're next.
Well, you kind of ruined it for me, Jeff. I was going to use this record, but I'm not going to now. I was going to use this one. But since so many people love it, I can go to another one.
Oh, were you really, or are you just putting me
No, I
on?
was on line there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's cool. So I'm going to go with, I got a whole stack here. I can go with any of these.
Just
But
don't
I'm
pick
going to.
the one I picked. Don't pick the one I'm going to pick.
Okay, I don't think you'll pick this one because
All right.
I know you don't like it. You're one of the people that don't like it as much.
Okay.
And I will die on this hill. This is one of the best albums ever made of the is this 90 or 89? Best albums of the 80s. I love this record. Hot in the Shade.
Come
Most underrated
on.
album.
No, you don't.
I absolutely
No,
love
I'm
it.
just kidding.
I will die on this hill. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. Most people don't like it for some reason. I got into this. They were my favorite band when it came out, and me and my friends went nuts over it. We had on a continual loop for like 3 months where we didn't listen to anything else. We were just singing everywhere, partying, drinking beers, whatever, going nuts. And, we were, and, there's some of the heaviest stuff they did on here, like No, 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 and Prisoner of Love, and Betray. Those Gene Simmons songs are so good. And, the Street Give Them, Street Taketh Away. I love all those Gene songs. And then there's some really strong Paul songs that are deeper cuts, like Silver Spoon and King of Hearts is one of my favorite songs. You Love Me to Hate You, I thought should have been a monster hit, but it wasn't a single. I love that song. Rise to It, I thought was great. And Hide Your Heart was like a throwback to the old 70s Kiss, I thought. And, I just love as a slap in the face. Every song this I love. A lot of people talk about it being bloated because there's 15 songs, but they did that. They kind of were trying to follow the Def Leppard blueprint with Hysteria. That's why they called it Hot in the Shade, short for hits, because they thought they were going to have a bunch of singles off this, and they really could have, but they didn't. They ended up only having 3. And the one song, their biggest hit they ever had actually came from this, Forever. It was the highest charting Kiss song, which Michael Bolton co-wrote, and Eric Carr's drumming on that for a slow song. You just isolate the drums on Forever, and it's absolutely amazing. The best drumming on any slow song ever, I swear to God. If you just listen to that, the drums on that, it just blows me away. And stuff like Cadillac Dreams, I love the guitar in that. The Bruce Kulick was killer. I just absolutely love this. I saw him on tour for this album with the sunglasses blowing off and the lasers going all over. It was really cool. But me and my friends, I swear, we're the biggest lovers of this album. Like all the people I grew up with think this is one of their best albums. It's not just me, but there's a small group of us. But yeah, I think this is the most underrated Kiss record ever. It's just, I go nuts every time I hear it. It brings back all that stuff, and I'm just sitting there singing along and jamming out. And I love it. And it flies by.
You got more participation from Gene than he had in, quite a few albums, because he was trying to be a movie star. And, I know Paul Stanley was trying to hold the band together and write the material and keep the band relevant. And I think on that album, Gene kind of like woke up and actually decided that he was going to be invested in Kiss again, fully invested anyway. But
yeah, I was going to say that too, Jeff. I think Gene's writing improved on Hot in the Shade.
I know about, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I agree with you, Aaron. I think it's a great album. I don't listen to it that often. I feel like I've got to pull out Slayer, Diabolus, and Musica, and I've got to pull out Hot in the Shade, because I'm looking at the track listing right now. Rise to It, Hide Your Heart is killer. I like Forever, of course. Cadillac Dreams is really good. The Street Giveth and the Street Taketh Away. I mean, it's all good stuff.
And Eric Carr made his singing debut on it too. Well, not his debut because he did Beth, but Little Caesar.
Little Caesar.
But I said the wrong song. It's Boomerang, the last song in here. That's just, it's almost like a speed metal song. It's just real fast and that killer drumming.
Yeah.
One of the Gene songs. And, you know, I think Gene gets a bad rap. On all of his 80s stuff, I think his songs are some of the strongest. I really love his stuff on Lit Up and Animalize and Asylum and Crazy Nights. And those are some of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
But he just didn't do as much. Paul was did 3/4 of it, and he threw a couple really good ones in every album. But yeah, I swear this is it's probably that and Asylum are my two favorite albums from the 80s of theirs. And that's with Lick It Up, which is a monster. Creatures of the Night. They're all good. I love them all, but I'm just hot in the shade. There's just something special about that record to me. And,
it's funny, when I first got into Kiss, I thought Paul Stanley was their only lead singer because that was the only songs I heard in the 80s.
Yeah, every video was him singing.
Yeah,
Right.
Except for I Love It Loud.
Good pick.
yeah, good pick.
All right, Brandon.
All right. So on this next pick, I'm kind of going with much of the same thought process that Chris, you had mentioned at the very beginning, where it's not necessarily people have bashed this album, but it's just one that hasn't gotten the love or attention that I feel it deserves. And so on this one here, I'm going to be going with Bruce Springsteen's Western Stars. And that was his release that came out in 2019, so one of the more recent, later Springsteen releases. And actually, I'd be curious, have any of you guys heard this album?
No, never heard.
I didn't know that album existed.
Yeah, see, and yeah, that's kind of exactly why I kind of had it as one of my picks, because not only is this probably one of my top 2 Bruce Springsteen albums of all time, it's probably one of my top 5 best albums that's come out in the last 10 years.
Wow. I'm adding that to my Amazon cart right now.
Yeah, and nobody knows about it. Like, nobody knows about it. I didn't even know about it until
Where's JC?
Yeah. Billy over at Riverbend Records, he mentioned it one day. It's like, dude, you have to check out the new Springsteen. And I'm just like, I haven't heard it. It's new Springsteen, so who cares? Got it, listened to it one time all the way through, and it was kind of like, listen to it again and again, and all of a sudden all of this magic started coming out, and I'm just like, this thing is freaking phenomenal. And basically the easiest way to describe it, it's hard putting music into words, but if you take Nebraska, that same type of writing, that same type of storytelling and everything, except to bring in the big emotional impacts, it's done with strings, like not necessarily an orchestra, but a bunch of strings are added to a lot of the songs to bring that big opening explosion of emotions and that type of thing. But they're that same Bruce Springsteen country type of songs. And there's a storytelling, and it's just so freaking moving. Like favorite tracks off of here, Hitchhiking, which is 1, 2, where again, just the entire time he's telling the story about this guy basically just hitchhiking, just going from place to place, just kind of a vagabond or whatever, but just telling the stories about the people that he's meeting, and him riding in trucks and riding in these muscle cars and seeing things going on around him. And he talks about the trucker, how he's riding up high and he sees this picture of like his girl on the dashboard, and just kind of all what that means to him. And it's just these stories that just grab you and take you right into it. The title track, Western Stars, again, absolutely beautiful. Chasing Wild Horses. I'm really kind of saying the same thing about every song. Sundown, Stone, There Goes My Miracle. This album is freaking amazing. That's all I can really say about it. And no one seems to know about it. But
I think after this video, Jeff, Aaron, and I are going to be buying that record. So
it's going to be on our Amazon carts. Well, the thing that's great about Bruce Springsteen is he's still a relevant storyteller today, and he's been famous. He's been a millionaire since born in the USA or whatever, and so somewhat, I mean, you can understand the storytelling on, Darkness on the Edge of Town and The River and Born to Run, because he was still you know, like part of the common man. I'm part of the working man. And he wasn't famous yet, and he wasn't a superstar. He was still, you know, struggling to make ends meet, like, you know, a lot of blue collar people that he wrote about was. And just the fact that he can still connect all these years later, you know, where he doesn't have a care in the world, you know, he's got more money than he could probably ever spend, but he's still able to write songs, you know, about ordinary people and that resonate with ordinary people and that are profound and that are meaningful and that are emotional. You know, like you say, and he's like Bob Dylan in that way, and that, you know, he's just such a gifted storyteller. He can immediately identify with, you know, the average person, or, you know, like the topics that he's writing about there. Obviously, it's not, well, I'm sitting here in the presidential suite of a hotel, or I'm sitting in my $1 million home. I mean, he's still, you know, talking to, you know, the same people that he was talking to back in the 1970s.
Right. And the thing I think he does with that right there that makes him so magical, and it's kind of the same thing I give so much props to Jason Isbell in Southeastern, is to be able to create such vivid pictures and pull you in with the simplest of words and sentences. Like he's not getting all, you know, so deep that you have to go through and try to figure out what he's talking about and what does that word mean. And it's not like that at all. It's like something that if a 12-year-old said it or a 10-year-old said it, you wouldn't think twice about it, but he just puts the right thing in the right place and you're just like, holy cow. But yeah, I have no problem holding that album up as one of the 10 best albums released in the past, for one of the 5 best albums released in the past 10 years, without question.
Wow.
Album is awesome.
Do you like his album, The Ghost of Tom Joad?
Yes. Love it.
That's one of my favorites by him. So I need to get this record.
Yeah,
Sounds
definitely check it out. I'd be really curious to hear what you guys think about it. I do think it's one of those albums that takes a couple of listens, just because there's so many little intricate things. Like with me, it was all about the strings. The first time listening to the songs, but then when you go back and listen to them again and start really, you know, taking the songs in, you realize there's some very specific placements on when he's bringing up emotions in songs and when he's taking you back down, and it flows right with the storytelling. It's free. It's absolutely amazing.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's my second.
Cool. Well, that's the great thing about these shows is I always leave these shows and I was like, okay, I've got 5 new albums to buy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, add to my Amazon cart. All right. So the next album that I'm going to show is The Soft Parade by The Doors. So a little history about The Doors. You know, he had their debut album, which was just brilliant. It was psychedelic rock, but it was bluesy. Just one of the best albums of the 60s, definitely one of the best albums of 1967. Then you had Strange Days, which was more of the same. You kind of had that. There was always this mystique about Jim Morrison and what he was singing about, you know, and you had that tight little unit of the Doors, and they were able to make magic with just the 4 of them, you know. And then you had Waiting for the Sun, which, okay, it wasn't quite as great as the debut album or Strange Days, but you still had 5 to 1. You still had Unknown Soldier, Spanish Caravan. I mean, there's some great music on there. And then, you know, back in 1969, if you were to go out and buy this album, the first thing you heard would, you know, Tell All the People. You got this blast of like jazz horns, you know, like this whole thing is like, what the fuck is this? You know, this is not the Doors. And then you got Jim Morrison, tell all the people that you see, follow me, follow me. I'm like, what the, you know, it's a Robbie Krieger song, but you're like, what the fuck is he talking about? You know, start talking about snakes, Jim. Start talking about,
Peyote.
You know, weird shit. What do you know, what the hell is this? And then you got, you know, Touch Me, which is,
I love that
you know,
song.
almost
Love
like
it.
Baroque pop. You know, you got more horns, you know, and I can imagine people being like, what the fuck is this the Doors? It says the Doors on the cover. It can't be the Doors, you know. And then it kind of, you got, you know, Shaman's Blues, and I think you know, it's a jazzy album, and I think it's not what people expect from the Doors. But I think if you like jazz, if you can appreciate the Doors, we're like, okay, we're tired of singing about, you know, the afterlife, and we're tired of singing about death. We're tired of singing about, you know, prostitutes. We're tired of singing about, you know, the same shit we've been singing about, you know, the first 3 albums, and we're gonna, you know, diversify a bit. But like Wild Child, tell me that's not one of the best you know, one of the best songs the Doors ever recorded. The Soft Parade, the title track from this album, is just amazing. Wishful Sinful is a great ballad. Love it. You know, I even like Easy Ride, I think is a cool little, you know, funky little track. You know, you got
I don't care
Otis
for
Redding, Running Blue. What's that?
Yeah, Running Blue. Doesn't Robbie Krieger sing on that?
No, it's Jim Morrison singing on it. I mean, he sings the middle part. Oh my, look at my shoes. You know, he sings that part.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the first time you ever hear Robbie Krieger on record. But that was, you know, Otis Redding had passed away in 1967, died in a train crash. So that was kind of a nod to Otis Redding. But yeah, it's you know, if you accept it, like, okay, it's a different kind of Doors. The Doors were very much, you know, John Densmore was a huge jazz fan. He grew up listening to jazz. He was trained as a jazz drummer, so he felt right at home with that. You know, Robbie Krieger could play some great jazz guitar licks. Jim Morrison was right at home singing to that style of music. Ray Manzarek was a big jazz fan. So it's totally in their wheelhouse. And they play it so convincingly. I mean, just because it's not bluesy enough, it's not trippy enough. You know, no, there's no When the Music's Over. There's no The End on here. You know, there's no Unknown Soldier or 5 to 1. But, you know, appreciate it for what it is. You know, the Doors went a different direction. They did it very convincingly. They did it very well. I love this album. You know, I'm not going to listen to anybody say, oh, whatever. And, you know, there's Doors fans who love it. But, you know, a lot of, you know, when people are ranking the Doors albums, it tends to be near the bottom. But I think it's a great album.
So do you think you can petition the Lord with prayer?
You cannot petition the Lord with prayer.
All right.
Guys, sidebars just kill me.
I was in seminary school.
I totally agree with you, Jeff. I think you have to have an open mind with this record, and you have to be into different styles of music. I happen to love Tell All the People. I love the song Touch Me. I never get tired of singing that freaking song. When it comes on the radio, I'm like, the windows go down. Come on now, touch me, babe. Ba-da-ba-da, and you'll see that I mean, Wild Child, like you said, that's a heavy freaking song. I'm just looking at the track listing here. Running Blue is the only questionable one for me. Wishful Sinful, beautiful song. And yeah, the Soft Parade is like, it's all over the place. But it's such a cool title track, and it ends the album.
Well, and Rick Beato did an episode on, you know, what makes a song great for the song Touch Me.
Yeah.
And on Record Store Day a few years ago, they did a stripped down version where they took out like all the horns, all the brass and everything. They took out any instrument that was not played by one of the members of the Doors, and you've got a stripped down version of it. That's a fantastic recording. I don't mind the jazz elements. I don't mind the strings that are on Touch Me. I think it's you know, it shows how diverse the Doors could be. They could do bluesy. I mean, and they did. The next album was Morrison Hotel. They got back to basics. They, you know, totally got back to, you know, Jim Morrison loved the blues, and, you know, they did that on their next 2 albums, Morrison Hotel and LA Woman, great. But, you know, I love the Soft Parade for what it is. They took a left turn. They wanted to make a jazz R&B album. They did it very convincingly. I think it's a great album. I think it holds together, fantastic. I think Do It, maybe if I had to say my least favorite track might be Do It, listen to me, sister, like that whole, hippy dippy, you are the ones who can change the world. I think it was another Robbie Krieger, like bullshit track, whatever. But, that song aside, I think it's a solid album. I think it's enjoyable. I like Tell All the People too. It's like once you get past the idea, like, okay, yeah, it's like nothing you've ever heard before by the Doors. But I enjoy the heck out of it.
Tell all the people that you see, follow me down. Yeah, that's a great song.
I could have said follow me up, but no, follow me down, get into the gutter, roll around in the dirt and the feces with me, and
right, smoke some peyote.
Yeah, and the puke and all the shit that you find in the gut, whatever. I don't know. Anyway, stop me. I'm sorry, Brandon.
Got some bad gutters in Detroit.
Yeah,
no kidding.
All right, well, my next choice is probably going to be obvious. I'm sure I bet you Aaron pulled this record too, but
probably
Saint Anger. Did he pull it? Yeah. All right. So Aaron and I did a video about Saint Anger. Again, check out the gatefold, real cool. All right. So a lot has been said about this record. Let's just put it into perspective here. We got Load and Reload, and then we waited 6 years for this album, and it was not what we were expecting. And I will tell you, at first listen, I don't know what I thought about it, because it was just, I had never heard anything like it. Lars sounds like he's hitting a tin can. James's vocals are not perfect like they usually are. There's cracks in his voice. It's a dirty record, like sounding. It's like you're crawling through the mud and the streets, and the shit that gets caught up in the bottom of your shoe. That's what this album is, but in a good way. It's like it's a palate cleanser. I love this record. It's freaking heavy. Excuse me, I'm getting all choked up. Frantic and Saint Anger are probably two of my favorite songs of theirs. Some Kind of Monster, what a dirty groove on that song. This album, no kidding, has one of my favorite Metallica songs on it. It's called The Unnamed Feeling. And I'm telling you right now, that song it's definitely in the top 10 for me of Metallica songs. And people are probably like, what, you're putting a song from Saint Anger in your top 10? Yes, I am putting a song from Saint Anger in my top 10. All Within My Hands is awesome. I almost feel like, Metallica was always wearing Misfits shirts and Sam Hain shirts, and that came from Cliff Burton. But they kind of got a Sam Hain Misfits vibe on this album too. Listen to the song Purify. I mean, it's lo-fi. There's a lo-fi vibe on this album, but it gets a lot of hate, but I dig it.
Well, you know what I think about that album is that, you had a lot of people feeling like Metallica was sort of getting a little too mainstream. They were getting a little too soft. You had Load and you had Reload. And then you had Garage Inc., which had, like Turn the Page. They had a freaking cover of Turn the Page on there. And so I think, Metallica was in danger, I think, a little bit of playing it too safe, of getting a little bit too soft, of trying to be a little bit too mainstream. And so I think that was exactly the album that they needed to make, because it's not safe. It's like the total antithesis of safe. Yeah. And I think it's reestablished like their hardcore credibility, because they could have made another, Load Part 2. They could have gone a little bit softer. They could have gone a little bit more mainstream. But instead, what you got is just that very aggressive, angry record, which I think is probably, I think to their credit, almost back to, kind of the whole thing that endeared them to everybody to begin with.
A couple other things that's cool about this record. The video for Saint Anger, I believe, was filmed at San Quentin. So you got a Johnny Cash connection. And the artwork, I believe his name is Pusshead.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he did the artwork for some of their 45s or something like that. I don't know. There was a connection. So they brought back Pusshead. I sound weird saying that, but I think that's his name. So I don't know. There was like an old school, let's get back to basics sort of vibe to this album.
And, and the other thing, I almost picked that album as well. And I think I've said this, I think we spoke about this before, but I'll say it again. I think it's worth repeating. I think really the main thing that was bad about that album was the fact that Metallica was the one that wrote it.
Yeah.
And I've been saying this for years. If that album would have been put out by some no-name band that was just coming out of the blocks, that was their debut album, it would have been all the freaking rage. I mean, it would have been all about how raw it was and getting back to basics and not being over polished or overproduced. It's just kids in the garage rock and roll type of thing. Like it had been all kind of positive things said about that album, but you write Metallica on the front of it and it sucks.
And to piggyback on what you're saying, Brandon, I totally agree. If this album came out by any other band, I would almost venture to say that Metallica invented a whole new genre here. And let's call it garage metal, because I don't know of any other album that sounds like this record. I mean, maybe one of our 23 viewers could point something out that I've never heard before, but I don't think there's another album that sounds like Saint Anger.
And when it came out, I loved it. I was one of the people, everyone was like, new Metallica is the worst thing ever. And I was like, I put it on, I absolutely loved it. And I loved that James's voice was more rough again. He wasn't being a crooner. He was just being more metal. And I always said, it almost sounds like it's led by the drums. Yeah, it's a really different drum sound, but it almost like lead drums through it. And I always really appreciated that about that record.
And people complain because there's not guitar solos on it. It's like, where's Kirk Hammett? Why aren't there more guitar solos?
But you listen to it, if you watch them play it on the DVD, it's like it's like a continual solo. It's like just the whole songs are a solo. It's not a standalone solo, but they're just going like crazy on the fretboard. It's just they never stop moving. It's like a different kind of solo. And Shoot Me Again. I know that's your least favorite. It's my favorite song in there. I love Shoot Me Again. I think it's an amazing song. And that and Frantic are my favorites. I love Frantic. And I think it's a very underrated record.
And Aaron had mentioned that James does not croon on this album, and he's correct. And also, James never goes ooh on this album either.
It is back to Metallica, back to the top Metallica, and that's why I like it so much, even from the first hearing. And a lot of people, it just wasn't, from the Black Album to Reload, and like you said, Garage Inc., it was just a little bit.
Yeah.
They were part of Garage Inc., which is, they were old stuff they put on. It was really heavy, but it's just, they kind of were sliding down a path, and they came back and hit everyone in the face with that one, which I thought. And some people
I wish they'd stuck the classic Metallica logo on that record. They don't have Metallica anywhere on the cover. If you had that classic Metallica logo on there, I wonder if people would have been more like, oh, they're using the old logo again. Yeah, I'm down with this record. And it's like, a simple thing like that. But, I don't know.
Something else that's very overlooked with very overlooked with Saint Anger is that I think some of Metallica's coolest lyrics are inside of that album too. I mean, just like with some of the memorable ones to me that just jump out automatically is stuff like my lifestyle determines my death style.
Yeah.
Like, how cool of a damn line is that?
And I think Kirk Hammett wrote that line.
Yeah. Or the other one when he said, watch your back so you don't stab mine. Mm-hmm. I mean, just throughout the entire album, there's so many cool lyrics, like stuff that's like tattoo worthy.
Yeah.
Kind of lyrics. And that gets really overlooked on that album.
Yeah. Oh,
I-
yeah, pretty good choice for Mr. Profi here, huh? Yeah.
a lot of people go into that record with a preconceived notion of what they're going to think of it too, instead of just listening to it.
Right.
So I was going to show the Clash Cut the Crap, but I figured I wouldn't show it. But.
Well, I'm glad you did that one because I was positive you were doing this record, which I pulled, and you didn't do it, so I'm going to do it.
Is it a Rod McEwen record?
Yes. It's the one where he's just spoken word.
Oh, yeah. The balloon.
Yeah.
Concerto for balloons.
It's up to me, right?
Yeah.
So this, one of the all-time great rock bands, and their first 4 records, all considered classics. And the weird thing is, this one too, when it came out, everybody loved it. In revisionist history, everyone doesn't like it, except for a couple people. And I'm talking about Diver Down.
My favorite. Yeah.
I love Diver Down. And, when it came out, everybody loved this record. I swear, you would hear it everywhere. And then now it's like, oh, there's all these cover songs. It's too short. It's all this and that. But I think this is an amazing record. And it actually has my favorite Van Halen cover song, Where Have All the Good Times Gone. I absolutely love that song. That I think it's the best cover they did. And they've done a lot of great covers. And I really love Pretty Woman, too. I think is great. Mm-hmm. With the Intruder intro, I think that's just one of my favorite things. But, they went a little different on some songs like Secrets. Secrets, one of my very favorite Van Halen songs, actually. Love that one. And then they got like the old Van Halen sound in there with the full bug, little guitars, hang 'em high, stuff like that. But I think people hate this more now than when it was out. I really think that. And I absolutely love this record. And every time I hear it, it's like, wow, that's like the best one. Until I hear with the other ones, it's like all of them are their best to me. But,
yeah, I've never understood the hate that album has gotten. I feel like it's almost like The Wall with Pink Floyd, where everybody loved it when they came out. Everybody loved it in the 80s. Everybody loved it in the 90s. Everybody loved it in the 2000s. And then it was like 2010, all of a sudden everybody's like, I don't like that album. Well, it's not Animals. Well, it's not Wish You Were Here. And same with like that one. It's like, well, it's not Fair Warning. Well, it's not the debut album. It's like, no, fuck all you people, because you all bought it. You all loved it at the time. You all cranked it on your boom boxes. So get the fuck out of here about, oh, I'm too good for Diver Down. No, you're not. Right here. You love it. For me, I think that David Lee Roth, that is his, I love his vocal performances on there. I feel like he sings better than he sang on any other Van Halen album. And don't tell me, it's got cover version, but since when did anybody complain about, oh, I don't like, I don't like you really got me. Oh, it's got a cover version on Van Halen, or it got cover version on Van Halen too, but it's like, oh, because, they, and I forget the history about that, but I feel like Van Halen wasn't quite ready to like put out an entire studio album, but the record company was like, come on, we need some product. And we're like, all right, well, I guess we'll do some cover songs and so we can pad out the album. But I don't care. I think Where Have All the Good Times Gone? I went like 15 years without realizing that was a cover of a Kinks song. Yeah. Because it's done so well. Dancing in the Streets. I like Dancing in the Streets. I think Big Bad Bill. I think that song is charming. I think The Full Bug is a fucking kick-ass song. So if you're a Van Halen fan, don't sit there and say, ooh, Diver Down sucks. It's got too many you bullshit. You bought it. You loved it. You cranked it in your Camaro and your cassette deck, all that. Don't try and act now like I never liked Diver Down. Bullshit. It's this whole revisionism thing about not cool enough for me. I'm too hardcore for Diver Down. They got Happy Trails at the end. How can you like an album that has Happy Trails at the end? Like, get the fuck out of here with that. Diver Down is an awesome album.
I totally agree. And I just want to say something about Pink Floyd for a second, because I love Animals. But why is everybody fucking choosing that album as Now it's like it has to be your number one album now. Like you said, Jeff, it's like, oh, Animals is my favorite Pink Floyd, and I love Animals. It's probably up there for me too. But when did Animals become like the in album to choose?
Yeah, it's just because it was like, well, nobody else seems to like Animals, so I'm gonna pick it and act like I'm super cool because nobody else is, everybody talks about Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall. I'm gonna pick Animals, and that's gonna be my street cred for Pink Floyd, And yeah, it's a great album, but don't pretend like that was like the gateway,
Right.
album for Pink Floyd. I mean, we
I
all
was like,
got
oh, I don't like Another Brick in the Wall. Yeah, you do like
yes,
Another
you
Brick in the Wall.
do. You like
You
Young
do.
Lust, you like Hey You like Run Like Hell, you like Comfortably Numb like everybody else, and stop acting like you don't. Oh, I'm too good for The Wall. Give me some metal. Give me some Wish You Were Here. I'm too good for that 1979, that, polished. Fuck off.
I only like the Sid Barrett years.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. And there's some people that really are like it on a subconscious level. It's like their barometer of what's good or what they should be into is I need everyone else to hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I can feel good about liking something. And it's like, how about just listening to the music?
So we just totally took the light away from Aaron.
Sure did.
All right, Aaron, we're sorry. Back to Diver Down, Aaron.
Oh, I'm good. That was great.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up because that was going to be one of my picks, but I'm like, I know either Chris or, Gary, when we thought, Gary was going to be a part of this video, or Aaron, somebody was going to show it. But that's always been, it's always pissed me off, the fact that people like Diver Down sucks. Like, no, it doesn't.
I even like
that's
that.
like people. That's like people who say I hate John Denver. No, you don't fucking hate John Denver. You like some of his songs. Come on now. When Country Roads comes on, you're singing along to that goddamn song.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Jeff says, fuck you. You like John Denver. Come on.
Yeah, like is Little Guitar's intro better than Spanish Fly? Is it all that different than Spanish Fly? People just have like this idea. Well, there's too many cover songs on it. So they do them great.
So this is leading to a video I think we need to do of, I don't want to say guilty pleasures because I feel like that's been done before, but almost like songs you like, but you don't admit. Or albums you like, but you don't admit it to people.
Mm-hmm. Songs that are too popular for you to like.
Yeah. Oh, I don't listen to CNC Music Factory. Yeah. You do listen to CNC Music Factory because whenever those songs come on, you're dancing along to the, oh, I'm going to switch it to the alternative station. No, you're not. You're going to listen to CNC Music Factory.
And I will take Diver Down over any Sammy. I know it's blasphemy, over any Sammy Hagar Red Rocker, because he's on his period.
I like
Red Rocker album. I don't give a shit. I would take Diver Down over 5150. I'll take it over OU 812. I'll take it over the Fuck album. I'll take it over Balance.
5150 rocks.
Yeah, it does.
But I agree.
I don't want to turn this into a Van Halen video. You know where I stand. I'm just saying.
And what's your favorite song on 5150 again? How do I know when it's love?
That's OU 812.
Oh, OU 812.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so I guess I like OU 812 better than 5150. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I remember you singing that song though.
I'm sure everybody does. I'm not going to do it again.
Come on, Jeff, do it again.
I can't. All right, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it again. You want to watch it? Go watch our Van Halen Sammy Hagar years video where I shit all over Sammy Hagar. Anyway, I'm so sorry, Brandon. I feel like we've totally gone off the rails.
All right. So I had two left because I had to drop one, and I actually am going to change my mind right now of the one I'm going to use. Okay. So I was going to go with Creed.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I was going to actually do them as a band overall. Yeah, I was going to do like, Torn, greatest hits and all of that. But I decided to skip them because the one that I was going to skip a moment ago.
Nice.
How could I not show it right now?
How do I know it's love?
Just completely changed my whole program in one moment there. I had to. I had to. 5150. I mean, we need to stimulate conversation here. And I guess the Van Halen one you guys did, I wasn't on that. I actually didn't see that one. But yeah, again, talking about albums that people tend to hate and not like, that's great albums. And I mean, a ton of people obviously hated when Hagar came about and when 5150 came about. But for me, song for song, from track one to the very last track, this is my favorite Van Halen album, without question. I've always loved Sammy Hagar just from the fact that I think he has one of the most beautiful rock voices. I mean, the guy can sing, the guy can hold high notes, he can add a lot of power behind it. And with what Van Halen was doing with 1984 and starting to bring in the synth and all of that stuff, I thought Sammy Hagar was a perfect fit at that point in time. But I just think, again, I honestly just think this is, in my opinion, their best album ever. It's more colorful to me. It's a little less rock and roll, which of course is probably some people that don't like about, where Van Halen was going. But I think it really just kind of fit the times. And I think Sammy's voice, along with Anthony, the harmonies that they do together were just absolutely made for each other. Matter of fact, I think on the chorus of Best of Both Worlds, when those two were singing that, I honestly think that's probably one of the best 1-2 choruses in rock and roll, period, the way their voices came together. And the songs were they were fun, they were light, they were summer songs, they were, hanging out partying songs. They were radio friendly. It was just good, quite frankly, pop rock music. And I just love every single song on the entire album.
Yeah, I'm looking at the track listing right now because obviously I don't know the track listing because I'm saying songs off of OU812. But I mean, I agree. I mean, I'm not going to say it's their best album. I mean, I can see why you would say that, but why can't this be love? I love that song.
Mm-hmm.
Dreams. I love Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Best of Both Worlds. I love. I'm a sucker for a love song. Love Walks In. And I'm going to say this too. I think the sound on this album, the drums are thundering on this album.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sonically, this album kicks ass.
Yeah. Well, I think too, I think it was a progression from 1984 because 1984 was a fantastic album. It was kind of the album that broke Van Halen through to the mainstream. And, one of the questions I've always had, one of the things I've always wondered is, if David Lee Roth hadn't either left the band or been fired, what would the lyrics have been? And because obviously Eddie Van Halen would have come up with the same guitar licks, the same tunes. I wonder what set of lyrics, David Lee Roth would have thrown on if he had been on that album. But I think JC, our friend, Josh, said it best when he said, David Lee Roth ain't talking about love, but for Sammy Hagar, that's all he ever talks about. I feel like Sammy Hagar's talking, he's always singing for 13-year-old girls. That's like where his basic, lyric
or me singing too.
But I like my favorite track on that album is 5150. I think it's got one of Eddie Van Halen's most brilliant guitar licks. I really, as much as I give Sammy Hagar shit, 5150 is a brilliant album. I have no problem with the lyrics on that album. Brandon, I agree. That is a fantastic album. I've always been a David Lee Roth guy. Van Halen was the first Van Halen album my mom bought. I remember her buying it on that cassette. Like, what? You're buying a Van Halen album? Like, what? But I mean, I think that, it really broadened Van Halen's appeal in a way that even 1984 wasn't able to do, because there were still some very sleazy moments on 1984, Hot for Teacher, Panama, Drop Dead Legs. I mean, you still had that sleaziness of David Lee Roth, whereas with Sammy Hagar, it's a little bit safer. He's not, he's not the lyricist that David Lee Roth is. 5150 is a brilliant album. As much as I am not a huge Sammy Hagar guy, I will concede 5150 is a fantastic album from start to finish. I even like Inside. I mean, I think it's like a fun little, Van Halen's always got that jokey little track on each of their albums, and I feel like, I'm fine with that. I listen to 5150. I do. I own it on vinyl and CD and cassette. Great album, no question at all. After 5150, I think it's a lot of bullshit. I think it's real spotty. I think, it's kind of hit or miss, but 5150 you can't, if you're a Van Halen fan, you cannot say that you don't like that album, because it's great. It's a hard thing to overcome, because David Lee Roth was such an enigmatic personality. He was such an iconic front man. How could you possibly replace David Lee Roth? But they did, and they did it very successfully. And Sammy Hagar, he didn't, to his credit, like, you had to fill those shoes, that iconic band. You had to step in there and you had to continue that winning streak. So yeah, I'm not gonna say anything bad about 5150.
And I bet you anybody who says Fair Warning is their favorite album, I guarantee they probably listen to 5150 more than Fair Warning.
Absolutely not. No way.
No, except for Aaron. Except for Aaron.
I listen to Fair Warning more than any of them combined. I love that album so much.
Yeah. And to me, that's kind of the amazing thing about Van Halen, period. I mean, talk about a group that just wrote it like a champ, because I think wasn't every single Hagar album, didn't it hit number one? I believe. And so when you think about that, when I went and saw him on tour when Roth came back on the Truth tour, and they didn't play any Hagar stuff the entire time. And it was just hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. And then you walk out of there thinking, that was absolutely amazing. And we did not hear one Hagar track. Like, that's just how amazing and broad their catalog is, where everything they touch was gold.
Yeah.
The thing I'd have been curious about Jeff, when you mentioned about if Roth would have still been there, if the lyrics and stuff would have been different or the same. But at that same time, before Sammy came on, Eddie was actually looking to get Patti Smith to come on as a lead singer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
really,
that would have been interesting. Like, where in the hell would they have gone with that? And I really would like to have known.
Yeah,
frankly,
it was
I can't envision that. What's that?
Wasn't it Patti Smythe?
What'd I say?
Smith?
Oh yeah, Smythe. I'm sorry.
The one from the Scandal.
Yeah, with the Warrior and all of that.
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking Patti Smith. Didn't she have an album called Horses?
Oh yeah, not that Patti. I did say Smith, my bad. Yes, Patti Smythe from Scandal.
I would have been way more interested to see Patti Smith and Van Halen than Patti Smythe.
And wait, and who is Patti Smythe? I don't know who Patti Smythe is.
Scandal.
Remember that song, the Warrior?
Oh yeah,
shooting at the walls of heartache.
Goodbye to you. Goodbye to you.
And I guess Eddie must have heard something, because he was actually pursuing it himself. And from what I understand, she kind of pushed it away.
Daryl Hall said that he was approached to be the lead singer of Van Halen. Can you imagine Daryl Hall in Van Halen?
The problem is I can never tell when he's serious or not. I'm like, did I miss something?
Yeah. No, I'm totally serious.
Chrissy Hynde was up for it too.
It really was.
Yeah.
Chrissy Hynde was for Van Halen too before they got Hagar. I think she was the second.
Yeah, but Hagar was a great fit, and just made them extremely radio friendly. I mean, quite frankly, the Roth years was rock and roll. The Hagar years was pop. I mean, but it was hard pop.
They should have brought Ian Gillan in to sing on.
Paul Carrick has sang for like every single band in the 1980s at one time or another.
4 or 5 songs from this record made my list. We did our top 10 Hagar era Van Halen songs. So and Inside actually made my top 10 along with Summer Nights.
I know you love that one, yeah.
Oh man, Summer Nights, man. That was one of those songs that just, I mean, it just did that. It just took you back. I mean, every time you listen to it, it's just the windows are down, the trunk is open. You're somewhere where you're not supposed to be doing something you're not supposed to be doing. You're just having a good time. Love that song.
So let's end the video with an album that we're surprised wasn't shown tonight. And
I got some.
I will start. I'm surprised nobody. Wait, what? Oh, Jeff has to go still. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's my fucking channel.
I know.
They're already trying to squeeze me out.
I'm sorry, I forgot. I thought we were on my channel for a second. Sorry about that.
All right. So bear with me because Diver Down just got me fired up, okay? Because I feel the same way about this goddamn album as I do Diver Down because they're fans of this band. I'm too good for this album. They were way better before. Fuck you. I've taken more shit because I like this album than any other album that I have shown. You know, one of my favorite bands is Genesis.
Oh, yeah.
I have taken more shit from people because I have stood up for this album and said, I think it's fantastic. But there are Genesis fans. Oh, no, it's not Peter Gabriel. Oh, no, it's not Progressive or not. It doesn't have Steve Hackett. It's not Duke. It's not Foxtrot. It's not Selling England by the Pound. It's certainly not
Lamb Lies
Down on Broadway. It's not proggy enough for me because I'm a prog fan and I'm offended that you would even suggest that an album like this could possibly have merit because it's got the Genesis name, because it's a Phil Collins solo album. Fuck you. I love this album. I do not give 2 shits about what you think. And you don't say you're a Genesis fan and then proceed to shit all over this album because you are not. What is not to like about this album? You've got the title track, Abacab. What's not to like about that? It's a fantastic pop rock album. And I think that's what people have a hard time reconciling is Genesis used to be a progressive rock band, and then their sound got, and I don't even want to say watered down because that's a negative connotation, but they had to survive, okay? They were not going to be putting out the musical box in 1980 and having people buy their albums, okay? If they want to put food on their table, they're not going to be putting out progressive rock shit because nobody gave 2 shits about progressive rock in 1981, okay? So you have to diversify. You have to move on. You have to adapt. And in some cases, yeah, that means selling out. That means getting a little more commercial, okay? People in 1981 were not buying stuff like Lamb Lies Down on Broadway or the shit from Foxtrot. They had to survive, okay? And Genesis, if they had not put out this album, they would not have put out their self-titled album that followed this, okay? They had to adapt or die. If you want to die on that horse, if that wants to be the hill you die on, is well, we're just going to do progressive rock stuff. Every song's got to be at least 8 minutes. Yeah, great. You're going to go bankrupt. Your record label's going to drop you, and your career is going to end. But no, they put out this album is fantastic. This is the first Genesis album I ever heard. I thought it was their debut album for a very long time before I'd ever heard of Peter Gabriel. You've got No reply at all. Oh my God, it's a Phil Collins song. I don't give a shit. Phil Collins is in Genesis. He can do whatever the fuck he wants, okay? And yeah, it's got horns on it. Get over it. Get over it, Genesis fan. This is a competent album. The only song I will give you, okay, Who Done It? Who Done It's a piece of shit song. Okay, granted. One song out of all the other songs on here. Man on the Corner, great track. Me and Sarah Jane, one of my favorite Genesis songs. Like It or Not, fantastic track. Another record, brilliant song. So don't get on your high horse, all you prog rock fans, and I'm too good for Abacab. Phil Collins sucks. No, you suck, okay? Get on board with Abacab. It's a fantastic album. I could understand if they put out some really extreme avant-garde track, or if they went totally Peter Cetera poppy and started putting out ballads, and all they did was, you know, cheesy love ballads. But that's not what this is. This album kicks ass. I'm sorry. You don't like it. You don't like Genesis, and get out of my face with that, okay? And this is the last. I want to hear people, you know, shitting on this album because it's a great album.
Well, I will say this too, and I'm not a huge Genesis fan, but I also like the album Invisible Touch. I think that gets shit on too. Now, here's what I will say about Genesis, though, is I think they did it tastefully. I think they transitioned from prog to pop in a good it was a good slow transition. It wasn't like suddenly they were a prog band and then they were a pop band. It was a slow transformation. I think they did it tastefully, and Genesis fans should be happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you listen to some of the keyboard work, like in Abacab, for example. I mean, that's not the basic pop stuff that you heard coming across the radio in 82, 83. I mean, they still definitely had their roots inside a lot of that stuff they were doing. And the whole idea behind, if you add a little melody to something you've sold out, is total and complete BS. It's like there's no human being walking the face of the earth that likes music at any level that somewhere you like a melody, or a melody strikes you good. It's natural. It just goes back to that whole, this is my group, and my group does something that you don't understand. And as soon as someone else starts to understand it, it's like, oh crap. Or as soon as your, 10-year-old sister starts coming and asking you, can I borrow your Genesis record? Or, can I borrow your Metallica Black album? Like, as soon as they start saying that, all of a sudden, oh, they've sold out. It's like, it's good music is good music. If you can't take a little melody, then just throw your CD player and your turntable and everything else away.
Exactly.
Well, the only thing people can say about it, well, Steve Hackett's not on it. Well, Peter Gabriel's not on it. Yeah, granted, Peter Gabriel left, but same situation with a lot of bands. Like, okay, our chief singer-songwriter has just bolted. Either we're going to pack up our tent and go home, or we're going to make the best of it. Pink Floyd, sound familiar there? I mean, the same thing Pink Floyd did. And Phil Collins, I think, did a fantastic job keeping that band together. And just the idea that, well, it's not Steve Hackett. Yeah, you've got these Steve Hackett snobs. Well, Steve Hackett left, so that was the end of what the fuck did Steve Hackett ever do since he left Genesis? And don't tell me I've got every Steve Hackett solo album and they're brilliant. No, they're fucking not. And stop with that already. Nobody knows who the hell Steve Hackett is. They know who Genesis. They know who Phil Collins is. They might even know who Mike Rutherford is. But Steve Hackett, don't give me that shit like, well, when Steve Hackett left, it was all over. They lost all credibility. No, they fucking didn't. And don't tell me that Wind and Wuthering is that big of a difference from, and then there were three. They're basically the same goddamn album. So don't say like Steve Hackett was an insurmountable loss. No, it wasn't. Get over your fucking Steve Hackett. Steve Hackett, I hate to break it to Genesis fans, he's not that great, okay? He was not irreplaceable. And you got a hard on for Steve Hackett, great. The rest of the world does not. He was not that fantastic. I hate to break it to you, it's a hard truth to have to digest. Steve Hackett was okay, but he was not insurmountable. Genesis went on. They did perfectly fine without Steve Hackett.
Well, I think the other thing
2020
too is,
hindsight. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just gonna say, I think the other thing too is people have to realize that Peter Gabriel realized the same truth. Like he couldn't do the fucking prog over and over again. Case in point, Sledgehammer. Love that song, but Sledgehammer wouldn't have been on Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I tell you that much.
Nobody shits on Peter Gabriel's solo work.
Right.
None of Peter Gabriel's solo work is progressive rock, but you don't have people like, I don't like So, it's not progressive enough. You know, I don't like one of the first fucking 4 self-titled solo albums. They're not progressive enough, but they shit all over Phil Collins because he's not progressive. Phil Collins sold out. Oh, really? What the fuck was Sledgehammer?
Yeah.
That's not selling out. Sold a lot of albums, but nobody wants to go there. Nobody ever wants to say a disparaging word about Peter Gabriel selling out.
Exhibit 2, and then I'll let Brandon talk. Shock the Monkey.
Big time, big time. You got horns in that fucking song.
So much of that. And that, Chris, that was exactly what I was going to say, is looking at the stuff that Gabriel did, you know, after he left. But even more so to me, it's just someone who loves music, period, right? It's like you use 2020 hindsight and say, how could you look back and say Phil Collins accidentally, if you will, got pushed to the forefront as we were going into the 80s, as if that would be a bad thing for any band. Like, you completely struck gold. And I'm one of those type of people too that would say, as opposed to keeping my band together, I would rather have the amazing work of Genesis in the 80s and the amazing work of Gabriel in the 80s. That's more great crap to enjoy. You know, so I've never understood that thing where it's like I said, it just gets so cultish sometimes when it's just like, we wouldn't have got all that great music. So enjoy the fact that it worked out the way that it did, in a good way.
Yeah,
Could you imagine Phil Collins being held off? Like, let's say Genesis did continue to go. If we never would have gotten any 80s from Phil Collins, like, that would have been disastrous.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I don't know why people are so scared to admit that they like a pop song. Like you said, Brandon, there's only so much Diabolus and Musica that we can listen to before we need Borderline by Madonna. I mean, you know, I need a melody sometimes. You know, and we were talking about, you know, Aaron showing the Megadeth album behind him, Super Collider, which is, that album's full of melodies, and people were like, oh, Megadeth shouldn't be doing, you know, we shouldn't be able to sing along to a Megadeth song. Well, yeah, you should be able to, and it's a great album. So I think people, and like Jeff said, they need to get off their high horse and just admit that you like a pop song every once in a while.
I think the Genesis of the 80s actually sounds a little bit like the Police. It's kind of that same, only one, a little of that same vein there, and I like it both. Abacab is one of my top 3 Genesis albums. I'll say that too.
Well, even Rush was influenced by the Police. So many bands were influenced by the Police. It was unavoidable. The Police were a brilliant band. And, you know, I mean, that's the whole thing. People have this like sense of, you know, well, they just decided to get more commercial. No, like, you had to adapt or die. You know, you were not going to get on the radio. You're not going to sell albums putting out 9-minute progressive rock, you know, self-indulgent bullshit progressive rock songs in 1981. You were just not. So if you wanted to be like, well, we'll just break up because I need to hold true to my values as a progressive rock, like, no, you were just not. I'm sorry. Genesis was a different band. Yeah. I mean, you don't like it. Like, I'm fine if you're like, I don't like that type of music, like, great, but don't, you know, shit on it and say it's not a great album when that you don't like that style of music anyway. You know, you don't like any bands that put out that kind of music, like, fine, but don't act like it was, you know, they turned out some piece of shit album just because it wasn't progressive enough for you. The rest of us like it. You know, I happen to like both eras of Genesis. I like Peter Gabriel. I like that transitional period where they had Steve Hackett for those couple of albums. And I like the Phil Collins era. Phil Collins era is what I grew up with. I went backwards and discovered Peter Gabriel. You know, back when I first heard Genesis, I would not have ever enjoyed an album like Nursery Crime or Foxtrot or Selling England by the Pound or Trick of the Tail. But I mean, you know, my tastes have adapted. And you don't like Phil Collins Genesis, like I get that, but don't say it sucks. Because for what they were doing, the type of music they were putting out, yeah, it was great. It's not progressive rock. I mean, I'll admit that, but it's still a very good album.
Yep.
All right. Well, I got a little emotional there, and I apologize. That was, you know, Diver Down and Abacab are the two buttons you do not push with me, because I will talk endlessly about this new record. But
Yeah, Jeff,
anyway.
I wish you were more passionate about music.
I know. I just feel like, yeah, I'm doing a disservice to these records because.
So my idea before, I know this is Jeff's channel and I'm like jumping on this or whatever, but maybe it might be a cool idea if one of us has an album that we're surprised one of us didn't show. And an album that I'm surprised nobody showed was In Through the Outdoor by Zeppelin.
That's a great one.
Yeah, I feel like that album gets shit on, but that is a great album. I love In the Evening. I even like Hot Dog. And it's proggy. You've got Carousel Alhambra on there. And oh yeah, nice one there. And I Think I'm Gonna Crawl. Yeah.
Yeah, I almost did Never Say Die by Black Sabbath. That was one of the ones where I'm surprised nobody showed. People shit on that album all day long. I love that album, and I do not understand the hate people have for Technical Ecstasy and the hate people have for Never Say Die. I don't understand it. And
Never Say Die has the song Air Dance on it, which is phenomenal. Yeah, Tusk is great. I love Tusk.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one.
Ball Breaker.
Ball
Nice.
Breaker. Yeah.
Ball Breaker. Yeah, I think that's an AC/DC album that gets overlooked so much. And
I wanted to hear Chris talk about Cut the Crap. I really did, because I was sure he was going to show that record. But
what album?
Cut the Crap.
Oh yeah, and here's what I'm going to say, just really short. I am not very familiar with this record, but I'm going to say this. If I was a Clash, I think this came out in 85. Am I right? I don't know. But if I was a big time Clash fan in the 80s, I would have been pissed off when this album came out, because, you know, you had albums like London Calling, Sandinista, Combat Rock. And then suddenly this album comes out and there's like electronic beats in it. And it's just sort of, I don't know, it's a haphazardly put together record, but listening to it now, and again, I'm not an expert on this album, and I'm not an expert on the Clash either. I don't mind this record. I don't know why people shit on it. They're like, this album is terrible. Like, there's no redeeming qualities to it. I don't know.
I think because Mick Jones isn't on it. I think people, you know, I think Mick Jones was kind of the Paul McCartney to Joe Strummer's John Lennon.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, but I don't know. I just think there's some good songs on here. You know, it's not London Calling, but I don't know. It's not as bad as people say.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are just like, I don't know. They like to shit on certain albums.
Yeah.
Well, it's just amazing how much people will put artists into a box, almost like they're not human. Like, you know, I want you to be one thing and one thing only, but after I leave you, I'm going to go into my life and I'm going to like different bands, different genres, listen to all different things, take in different things. I'm going to personally grow. I'm going to find new ventures in life. But when I come back to you, you better be that same thing you've been for the past 20 years. It's like, no, these bands, those are humans. Those are people who are growing and developing and changing too. So don't get pissed off at them when you cut your hair, but they don't cut theirs, or when they cut theirs, you're pissed off at them, or they change their styles and blah, blah, blah. Just, yeah, there's people over there, not robots.
I almost did Queen Hot Space.
Yeah.
You know, there are people who like, and I get it. I mean, it's almost like worse than the Phil Collins, you know, the whole thing about Hot Space. And I mean, they didn't lose any band members, but they were just trying out something different. They were trying out new wave. They were trying out synth pop, but they do it. They do it well. I mean, it may not be your taste of music, but for me, somebody who likes synth pop, somebody who likes new wave, I think there's a lot to enjoy about that album. It just, it's not, you know, going to be like a night at the opera.
What's the Rolling Stones album when they're like on the front cover and it's all colorful, like 19?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Dirty Work.
Dirty Work.
Yeah, I don't. Is that looked on as a shitty album?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it shitty? Is it shitty?
No, it's not. I mean, that, you know, I mean, people like Harlem Shuffle was a big single off of there, but it's not like the Rolling Stones did Hot Space. They weren't trying to do synth pop. They weren't trying to do like, you know, drum machines or anything like that. I mean, is it the best Rolling Stones album? No. Is it a total like left turn departure? No. I mean, I think though, if they had a different album cover, I think it was the whole album cover with the whole pastel neon thing going on that turned a lot of people off. But it does, to me, it doesn't sound like any that different from Steel Wheels even.
There you go.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, this was a fun discussion. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of opinions. Definitely leave a comment. You know, do you agree with any of our picks? Is there anything else, any other albums that you would choose that people tend to shit on, but you really actually like that album?
Does anybody like Lou Reed Metal Machine music?
I'd be interested to know.
I don't know.
I don't. I think it's a shitty record.
I think it was deliberate. I think it was definitely an FU to the fans, but anyway, Creed.
I don't know really much about Creed.
I'll have to say I'm not a fan, but that was the beginning.
Yeah.
But I understand.
Well, I think the one magic thing about Creed, just not to make this video longer or anything like that, but the thing that always seemed magic about them is, they were kind of the pop grunge radio friendly stuff, but to bring as much emotion into the stadium sized rock songs that they could do, I don't think any band was able to do that better. And to me, that's what made them giants for the time that they were. And I've loved them from day one. I mean, and it's one of the easiest bands to get, just between them, Nickelback, and Coldplay. Like, those three bands are just constantly getting pounded.
Yeah.
But I love Creed. I wish they would talk about another box set like we were talking earlier, Aaron, with the Godsmack. Give me a Godsmack and a Creed box set with all the studio albums, and I'd be one happy freaking dude. That's all I need reissued for a year. I just want like 400 subscribers.
I guess Jeff wants to end the video.
Well, I'm just saying, people don't typically watch a 2-hour video. If you're still watching now,
I'm just kidding.
That's off to you. But
I'm just kidding you.
Yeah.
Wait, maybe we should talk about Diver Down again.
Yeah, we'll do an entire episode about Diver Down. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. You guys rock, and we'll see you next week.
It's been